Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Deadlock and Load. My name is Cryptic here with Banana Slam Jamma, as always. How you doing, man?
I'm good, bright and early for this episode
Yeah.
because it's been a tough time for us to connect. You know, this 8 hour difference sometimes gets in the way when we have real life obligations. But this is also a real life obligation, so I'm excited here. We got an interesting topic today. I love discussing things that apply across all of games, but in this case
Yep.
also Deadlock, of course. And I'm trying to do my little spoilers or little dangle here, but
Just breadcrumb it.
yeah, breadcrumb. I'm looking forward to today's topic. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Yeah, it's interesting. I almost forgot we were supposed to record tonight because I'm so used to like the morning for
Yeah.
it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go hop in bed. It'll be chill. And then I was like, I'm recording in 30 minutes. Never mind. So I'm back. Yeah, no, I'm good. It's been a fun day. I've been um learning a new card game actually called Flesh and Blood, which has been amazing. It's not really the topic of, today's discussion, but it's been a really fun learning experience. I'm enjoying that because I haven't really gotten into trading card games in a while, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Today's all
good.
about card games, everybody. No,
Yeah,
I,
surprise.
we when we used to live together, we used to play Dominion all the time. I was like randomly
I
thinking about
know.
that game a few days ago because I started playing a bit of Slay the Spire because
Oh,
I
that's
heard the
good.
second one's coming out and everyone was saying like, you should try it. And I was like, deck builders. When was the last time I played a deck builder? And then I thought of Dominion, which was what we played. But yeah, no, I mean, back to games that require a tad more mechanical skill.
Yep.
In the
Yep.
sense of Deadlock. And when we're talking about skill, first thing I think of is ranked.
Yeah. How good are you at the game? We can put an actual number on it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's obviously some jokes being made there, right? The whole MMR is just a number, but yeah, Deadlock has ranked, and I think we've talked or mentioned about the idea of ranked in the past on this podcast, and today is the day we're finally going to do kind of the deep dive into ranked, not necessarily just in Deadlock, but as a concept for gaming, and then how it applies to Deadlock currently, which I think is going to kind of be the meat of the discussion, because this is the game we love, the game that we want to talk about, and I think it is important to see how ranked is potentially affecting the game, whether it be good or bad, and that's what we're going to try and figure out.
Absolutely.
So, do you want to start things off? Because I'm actually just curious. What was like some of your first experiences with ranked when you were playing games, like any game? Like when were you first getting exposed to, I guess, a ranked system?
I mean, I feel like Halo 3 was my first experience with a hardcore ranked system. And when I recall that ranked system, for lack of a better word, it was terrible. I remember there was like
Hmm.
a max level of 50 in like every game mode, and it was like based on like you'd calibrate based on like how many games you'd played. So if you like won your first like 100 games in a row, you'd get rank 50 immediately. But if you got to like rank 39 after, 1,000 games or something, it would take you 100 games to make rank 40. Like it took so much time, and there was no like rhyme or reason to like how much it climbed your MMR if you'd win or lose. So like in that system, my biggest issue with it was that it felt like it favored people making new accounts, and it also felt like there was too little transparency with like what is making me go up in rank or not. Like, what does this 39 compared to 40 even mean? So that was my first experience with ranked. I loved it. I loved playing ranked Halo, but like I also hated that aspect of not even knowing what my rank meant. But back then I was like 13 or 14. So did I particularly care or think about it or stop playing the game, or I don't think it really affected my experience because at the end of the day, at that point in time, I don't feel like the average gamer, sometimes people would shit talk you for being higher ranked than you, but that was not really a thing back then for the most part. What about you? What was your first experience?
Shit talk because you're ranked. You got shit talk because someone fucking owned you. Like
Yeah.
someone outplayed you and was like, "Oh yeah," and then You know, that was the
Exactly.
Xbox Live days, right? That's how it worked. For me, I mean, Gears of War for me is the obvious one, I think. That being said, it didn't really have a proper matchmaking system. A lot of these old multiplayer Xbox 360 games didn't. They just had a ranked mode where you could queue up and you just got put against people who were like relatively the same level as your account. But that was like about it. And that's why, we made a team and we would like scrim people and play in tournaments because we couldn't get like proper ranked matchmaking. But it didn't really bother me that much back in the day. Like the more I thought about it, I was just having fun. Like I was just queuing up and like with a couple of friends and we just like run around and just try to get better, regardless of whether or not we were stomping people or if we were getting stomped ourselves. Which that second part didn't really happen often. It was either a close game or we stomped, Uh not to like toot our own horns, but we were very good. But then like the actual next like real ranking system to me, dude, I'm gonna get some hate for this. Literally, League of Legends, like actually, like season one of League of Legends, like before, because I played it in alpha and beta before there was like a ranked ladder, and then I guess like they put out season one, and I guess that was like the first time where I was like, all right, I have like a ranked MMR, I suppose, but it was quickly surpassed by Heroes of New Earth, which was like the next experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like there were various Xbox Live games that I played that have ranked systems. I then played StarCraft 2 as my first PC game.
Oh God, yeah, that would be a good call.
With a ranked system. I really enjoyed that one, to be honest, like meaning I felt like it was pretty accurate. I was platinum by the end of it. And I remember like wanting to climb to diamond. I think it's kind of similar to kind of what Deadlock is now, what League is before, or like League is that you're talking about, and then also talking about like Dota, where there's like medal badges, and you kind of want to hit that threshold and like jump over and say I'm diamond now, or I'm master. I felt like that game was rewarding because what's different about StarCraft 2 is that it's a single player game. So I think that even opens up a topic of single player games are probably on average a bit more satisfying or pure in regards to, yeah, I agree with that, in regards to your rank and how it feels that you're the sole impactor of your rank. So like I think having ranked modes, we can talk about the fact that there's a lot of team games. You talked about building teams and scrimming and learning to play better with people around you. It seems like whether it started with Dota 2 or everyone else around it, it seems like solo ranked has become the norm, and that's also demonstrated in Deadlock. And so when I think of like the evolution of ranked modes, my biggest thing was that when I played Halo, when I played Dota, when I started out, I played Gears of War. I played Gears of War 2, and I even think of like Modern Warfare, even though it's like mainly prestiges and stuff. The game did have like some degree of skill-based matchmaking, I feel like, and the difference here from all of these games, excluding StarCraft, I guess I did sometimes play 2v2s and 3v3s and stuff, but I played with friends. I played with people that I knew, and there were random people that I met on the internet as well. Like I remember back in high school, I had like internet friends, quote unquote. I had like
Same.
Yeah, and that was a huge thing. And I'm sure nowadays people still meet each other on the internet through gaming, but I guess it's hard to explain. But back then, I didn't really care if there was a wide skill discrepancy between them, my friends, and I. I didn't really care about that, right? And
it wasn't as big a deal.
It wasn't as big a deal, and I guess I don't really know why. Do you have thoughts on that? Like why?
I think it's the number.
The number.
I think it's actually a number. I think it's the medal, because like I'm gonna backpedal my original thought. I
Yeah.
forgot World of Warcraft might have been my first actual ranked ladder experience because
Mm.
I was very active in like arena, but also in raiding. Like I was competing for server first stuff, which in its own is like a ranking type thing.
Yeah.
But like arena was an actual ranked mode, right? Where you were competing against and with people, and it's exclusively not solo, right? It's 2v2, 3v3s, and 5v5s. So like yeah, I think back then I experienced it a little bit there as well, whereas like the number made a difference, like for sure, on whether or not you wanted to play with certain people, because you would be looking for people that like at the top end would be like, all right, if you don't have gladiator, we're not going to even like consider you for the team. Like if you don't have gladiator, you can't join our guild. Like if you don't have gladiator, like just like you, like we just don't trust you. We can't believe how good you are, which there is some merit to that, being like, all right, well, we know how good you can't, like you are, like, you know, we'll scrim and test you out. But at the same time, like that was such a barrier, and it just made it so that a lot of people couldn't play with each other. And I think the same thing is what we're seeing in games nowadays, whereas like we're talking about like Gears of War, Halo, all these other stuff, there was no number. You just like played with friends, you had fun, and that was kind of more important than this arbitrary number that told you how good you were.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think of like competition breeds innovation, it's like by having these numbers, it tells you exactly where you stand, at least according to the game system. And even if no game system is perfect, I feel like every game system I've played has merit. Like, very rarely is somebody above me and I'm like, they're not as good or better than me. Like, very rarely that's not the case. And it allows for, you know, because I'm consistently playing with people of my skill bracket, at the end of the day, I'll get better. Like, I will get better faster if that's the case. But, you know, I guess something we can talk about, because that's what's happening in Deadlock, is what's the trade off? You know, what's the trade off of giving me this rank that then allows me to play with people that are better? Because at the end of the day, like, let's take the system in Deadlock before the ranked mode. And like, we think of a game like Dota, that's the game I spent 12 years playing. You spent a huge chunk of your life playing as well. And there was plenty of time in Dota 2 where there was no ranked system. And so there were still like a high skill bracket, normal skill bracket, and like very high. And so like you would be somewhat paired with people of similar rank, and I felt the same in Deadlock. Like, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but
Close.
it was close.
Usually
Like,
close.
the majority of games felt like, yeah, this guy's about as good as I am. Like, that's how it felt.
Yeah.
And they even said that there was some degree of like skill-based matchmaking. And I was getting better. You know, I was getting better at the game, and I also feel like I was exploring the game. I felt like I was able to just, I don't want to say not give a shit. That's probably like too broad, because I'm a super tryhard player. Like, I will,
Yeah.
no matter what you put me on, you literally play me against me in like a bowling match, like in real life, or like a board game, and I'm gonna try to fucking win. Like, there's no, you know, breaks on this train when it comes to trying to win every single thing I play. I think I'm not a sore loser. You know,
You're just a competitive person.
I'm just a very, very competitive person. So,
yeah,
like,
I get it.
I think when I see the number and the gatekeeping that you were mentioning, that happens because, like, oh, you can't join this guild until this. There is the positive that the competition breeds innovation. Like, just going back to that, there is that positive. But, you know, I guess for me, like, when I really think back on it, unless you're like trying to go pro or spending like 20 to 30 hours a week plus on a game, I don't feel like the difference in skill acquired is really worth it, for like the, I don't want to say like the mental or like emotional toll that it takes to, on a person, to be told this is how good you are at something, here's a number. Like, if you think of like
Yeah.
human history,
I
right?
think that's very valid.
Like, human history, the only number that ever gauged people's value was money. That was the only one, you know? And now we've got it for every single thing we do online, like, if you think about it. So People talk about like gamifying life and having like more tangible rewards for yourself. And it's like when you look at Dota, or not Dota, when you look at ranked in Dota, and you look at ranked in Deadlock, and you look at ranked in all of these other games that we're talking about, you just see, here's my value in each individual game. And I don't want to leave I think the biggest thing for me about ranked is that it makes it feel hard to come back to a game. Like,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, my
It's almost another barrier to entry.
Yeah, because I'm 2K now, and I know that since I didn't play for 2 weeks, I'll probably be like 1800 or something. But the game still says 2K, so I'm probably gonna spend, 10 games losing or something, and then
you feel bad.
and then you feel bad, and then you're like, well, then I have to grind to get back where I was, and the sad reality is that is how life works. Like, if I go to the gym, for instance, right? If I take 2 weeks off, I'm going to have to kind of warm myself back up to get back where I was. Like, that works with pretty much everything. But now that I'm competing against somebody, it's not like I go to the gym and say, hey, man, how much are you lifting over there? And then
It's competitive gymming now.
Yeah, so I just think about the fact that, like, I use gym as a pure example because you're bettering yourself, and it is like a numbers-based thing here. And it's like, I'm doing that to make myself feel better, like, physically, and just kind of like the competitive pursuit itself is rewarding, just to like try to be better at something. So I guess when I'm like I've kind of rambled a bit, but I do feel like
That's fine.
by adding the number and telling you constantly what it is and showing other people the number, it just kind of pollutes the game, like in terms of the pureness, like you said earlier, of the game. And I guess, like, what are your follow-up thoughts? Do you have any other thoughts about what I just said? I don't have like a direct question.
I mean, no, I get what you're saying. I think for me, like, I've experienced a bunch of different ranking systems over the years. I think Deadlocks is very different, even though it's obviously we're talking about all these, like, it is a number, it's a badge, like it's like the core of it is still there, but the way it works is still technically different from the way a lot of other games do it, and that's like a pretty classic Valve thing to do. They're like, we're going to reinvent the wheel on this, or try to, in a way. And I'm all for encouraging that. I want them to see if they can come up with something better, but I guess we could just like talk about how the Deadlock system currently is set up and why it might be different, especially since the game is in beta, or why it might be the way that it is. Or if this is just like an experiment, which we don't really know about. But for those of you who are obviously actively playing Deadlock, you probably know this. Like, ranked in Deadlock is not available 24/7. It's a limited queue time, which I personally think is a massive benefit. I think the game would be in a disastrous state if it actually was open all the time. But I think for the most part, having at least a limited playtime, I think, is definitely beneficial to the player base. It's only open for certain time zones, certain hours of the day, right? I don't remember is it like 6 to 8 hours? I don't remember exactly how long it is.
Yeah, I think they've tweaked it a few times, so I think
Yeah,
the relevance is that it's usually prime time, like something like 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., like the time where people are getting done with school or their jobs. And so I do want to talk about, like, briefly tangent from what you're saying about the time zone, in the sense that my thoughts on this is that I love the time zone. I love the fact that they said, yeah, you can only play ranked for 6 hours a day. There are drawbacks for people in the sense that, like, what if they have something going on in life that just doesn't allow them to play at those times?
Sure.
So that's, like, those people out there, we hear you. But I guess, I think I talked about this when we briefly touched on ranked in, like, a few episodes ago, which was the degenerates that are region hopping so that they can play ranked 24/7 because that's all they freaking care about, right? And, like, personally, the way I view human psychology and human nature is that we will figure out how to exploit any system there is if we want to. Like whatever our objective is, we will achieve it if it's possible, right? So if I want to play ranked 24/7 and that means I have to region hop, I will do it, right? And so I guess like whenever I think about systems made taking that into account, I have to think, how can I safeguard the rules? Like, meaning, how do I, like, for instance, prevent region hopping so that that doesn't happen? You know, maybe you cap it at like 5 to 10 ranked matches a day instead of, you know, each region having its own timer. These are all just theory crafting. But I guess what I'm trying to say is the main thing I'm trying to highlight with the fact that people are region hopping is just how far we've come and how far we've devolved, I would almost say, to the fact that people care so much about ranked that they can like, I feel like people no longer give a shit about unranked.
They don't enjoy it.
About unranked games anymore. Like, people were trying really hard in most of my unranked games prior to ranked matchmaking coming out. And even if they're still unranked to like theory craft and like try new builds, it's like either people are always trying something new and like kind of dicking around, or straight up they're just unmotivated and they'll just like not play the game to its end. You know, they'll kind of give up early because these games don't matter. And I think any system that kind of creates or encourages that type of mindset is dangerous for the enjoyment of it and the community as a whole. So I guess my question is, what do you think about the people that are region hopping that like kind of now only care about ranked? They don't have to be region hoppers, but like they only care about ranked. They don't really care about unranked anymore. How do you feel about that dynamic? Have you noticed it? Does it affect you at all?
I have. Oh yeah, I've been pretty heavily affected by not necessarily the region hoppers, but like people just chasing the dragon, man. Like they're looking for the dopamine hit so heavily on like the weekly reset of like, did my rank go up? And I think that is just it's unfortunate, but like that is how so many people are just playing the game right now. They're like, I gotta get. Okay, so I guess before I go that down that route, the way the system is currently set up, right? You have to play at least 7 games a week to even be considered to get a ranked badge, which isn't that much. Like that's 1 game a day, which most people who are going to play Deadlock will probably play 2 or 3 in one sitting, and maybe like once or twice, a couple times a week. Like it's a pretty reasonable request. So I think the 7 games to be considered for a rank badge is another plus, which I think that's a good thing for this system. I think the limited play times and the minimum required games are good. I think those are generally positive. I think the next big positive is the fact that you don't get live updates on your rank calibration. I think the fact that it does not give you a number plus or minus after each game generally reduces the toxicity of the player pool, because people aren't getting an immediate feedback on whether or not they won or lost. And instead it'll be like, all right, let's look at the total sum after a whole week of playing and we'll see what happens. And I think that's a generally much healthier way to approach ranked than queuing a game, losing, and seeing that you lost like 35 MMR, and then the next one you queue up and you win 15, and you're just like angry even though you won, you know? And I think that is one of those things where like this helps eliminate those scenarios and just generally can help keep the toxicity level of the player base down, specifically in ranked, which people are typically more on edge about. But when it comes to like region hoppers and people that are just like chasing this dragon of ranked, I think that is where things get the most toxic, and when things get like really out of hand, because then you're not really like playing the game for fun. You're playing the game for the wrong reasons. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like, you're playing the game so that like you like, I finally hit this rank. I'm better than these people. And it's like, congratulations, I guess. Yeah, like I don't know what to tell you. Like the game's in beta, it's gonna change drastically in a week, and then you won't be that good, you know? Like it's just weird to me that like with the game in its current state, that is what people care about so much.
Yeah. I mean, My mind goes racing down like 100 rabbit holes every time we're talking about this.
Dude, it's such a complex topic.
Yeah. I guess I need to collect my thoughts for a second. I think when I think of okay, so I guess I'll just start with the fact that I'm thinking about kind of how anything that happens at super high skill levels or people who play the game a lot, it'll trickle down to anyone who plays the game a little bit less or lower ranks. Like whatever dynamic is happening up there, generally speaking, I think is reflected in the rest of the community, at least somewhat. And so like I think back to your gatekeeping mention of like you have to be X rank to like join these raids. And I think of the fact that if there's people that care that much at the top, the people below them are going to run into people like, or they're going to experience things that are like, you know, they're good enough to play against these people, but they're not as good as them. They get gate kept. They get like antagonized for not caring as much about rank or something like this as the people above them. And then that like kind of snowballs down to, if I don't care about ranked, I guess I'm not supposed to play this game. Like I get like to you know, to the more casual player, right? When we go all the way down. And then I also think about like, for instance, you know, we played back when I was playing on the Sing Sing stack like daily, because he's not really playing anymore, is that I feel like that stack basically got divided up by people that occasionally wanted to play ranked. Like, and you can't play ranked with your stack. So I'm wondering in my head, like maybe people out there, you know, you can resonate with this. How many pre-made parties of people who just enjoyed playing the game together are now gone? You know, that they no longer, it's not that they don't play ranked together,
I'm so
obviously,
glad you're asking.
because it is solo, right? It is a solo ranked mode, so you can't play that together. But how many people stopped playing unranked together? And that's like, I don't know if there's stats there. I'm sure it sounds like sounds like you've experienced this. What are your thoughts?
That is, I think this is where I wanted to get into eventually, and which is the topic of, is this whole system, is ranked good for Deadlock? I think at the end of the day, that's kind of what this comes back to, is like adding this system into the game healthy for the game and for the scene, especially this early in development. And I think I've talked about it before. I genuinely do not think it is healthy for the game. I understand people wanting to have a badge and all this stuff, but I do think the general appeal of Deadlock as a whole came from being able to play with friends and being able to queue up and just have a good time exploring this game, learning cool stuff, and just playing with friends. It was a genuinely, it was a very fun, genuine experience that we have not had in a game like this in a long time, because everyone is so obsessed with a ranked. And I think a vocal minority of players who are obsessed with proving that they are the best players out there pushed Valve in a direction to institute a ranked mode. And people are probably like, oh, well, how do you know? Well, I know a lot of those players. Like, I know a lot of them that were pressuring the team to put in a ranked mode. The player base on this game has been steadily decreasing since it was pretty much the non, I don't know what you call it, the public restrictions and stuff were lifted. It peaked at around 171k like concurrent players. It's been steadily decreasing since then. But those are concurrent player times, which that's not really what I wanted to look at. For me, it was the average monthly users, I think, was a good tell of how this has changed. We gained players in August. We gained players in September. October broke even. And in the last 30 days, we've gone negative. And the ranked update came out October 10th. And I cannot say for certain, like this is all speculation, but I would say it is very likely that ranked is like the sole responsible reason, if not, maybe not the sole, but a primary driver to why people have left, for the exact reason that you stated, which is that a ton of people that used to play with friends and just have fun with the game, those stacks have completely been obliterated by certain people saying, I want to go do ranked, and other people being like, well, I don't. And so they just stop playing.
Yeah, so just like the stat is that the highest, okay, so the game actually experienced a like 15k upward trend 3 days after ranked came out, so there was probably some degree of like, hey, that's exciting.
Something new, cool. Let's check it out.
Let's
Yeah.
go get our badges or whatever, and so that was 92K, and then when we're looking at the game right now, it's at approximately 39K. So it's dropped 60% since the time.
These are concurrent players, by the way.
Concurrent. So of the peak concurrent players at the time, that it has dropped 60% since ranked being released, and that's even being generous because it went up right after ranked got released. And so like that is the question of like, who are these parties, like is that the case? Because I guess when I look at the game, you mentioned you thought it was too early. Like that was your immediate gut reaction, and I'll tell you, like, coming as a try-hard competitive player that I've mentioned that I am, I was excited when ranked came out. I was excited myself, but I also know, how often in life do we truly know what we want? That's a philosophical question we could dive into some other time. I don't agree with what I thought originally. Like, I definitely wish they had not added ranked to this game. I feel like not only is it unnecessary at the moment, because that's not why people were playing, right? That's the biggest thing.
Exactly.
Like you said, that is not why people were playing. I think so much of us, especially the Dota players, because it's like, the MOBA shift from Valve, is like, we loved the good old days of Dota where you just played. You just played. Everyone had like their... I remember the loading screen where you had your 5 profiles on top of each other and people would make funny pictures. Like, that's a moment I think of like good old days of Dota. Like, I would run like, random 2-hero offlane combinations with my friends, and they were terrible in hindsight, but we made them fun, and that was like experimental, and that part of Dota was like, figuring out what works for you. And I feel like in Deadlock, that's what people were doing, like before ranked came out. And now I feel like it's much more, you look at stream titles, it always says like Eternus 6 or trying to like grind to Eternus or grind to Phantom, or, it says
just whatever. It's all ranked.
Something about ranked. And it's not a social environment anymore. Like, the person is now dialed in, trying their absolute hardest to win their game rather than hanging out with the community. And I guess, you mentioned it being too early. I think it's not only too early because of that, but also because of what we talked about in our previous episode, which was the fact that the game's changing so fast. So if you're changing the rules of the game so fast and you're trying to figure out exactly what you want this game to look like, who cares how good you are at this game? Like, I don't want to feel pressured to keep up with the meta while also being told how good I am at the game. There is such thing as too much feedback, I think, there's just such thing as knowing too much. And it's like, I guess before, when they were changing the game rapidly, because they've been doing that since I started playing, it didn't feel bad to have no idea what was going on, to not know what items were good at the time, and being like, I'm just gonna try to figure out this hero and like learn item builds for it. And it feels like with ranked that process doesn't really happen, at least as naturally. And so, yeah, I guess it's just kind of like, as much as I actually learned a lot thinking about just my approach to the game as a whole, and just games generally from our talk last episode. But I also feel like, how do I word it? It's like, I feel as if you give me something I have to reason through, like I have to make sure, oh, that's a better perspective. Let's make sure I don't take my, the one that I feel like was more toxic for myself, which was to worry a lot about ranked, feel bad that I wasn't playing the game as much because I just had to work out of town for a couple weeks, so I didn't have time to play any games. And it's like, well, now I'm kind of scared to like go back and be shit. What if I drop 3 ranks? And it's like, that would have just not bothered me at all if there was no ranked system. And so, you said there's the vocal minority that asked that were pressuring for a ranked mode. My question, I guess, going off of this, and feel free to not answer this question first if you have something else to say, is there any such thing as going back? Like, can
Oh,
you
absolutely.
you
100%.
so you
I
think
think you
they
can
could
roll
just
it back.
say whoops and then just exit,
Yeah.
exit?
That's the bet. That was going to be one of the last things I want to talk about.
Okay.
Actually, like, was how does this affect development? How does the rank system that is currently in place affect development of Deadlock? Because at the end of the day, that is the only thing that really matters right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, people have to enjoy the game, people have to play it, but we are talking about a game that is in early development that Valve is constantly working on, putting a lot of resources in to make the best game that they possibly can. And I trust Valve with that.
Me
Trust me, they
too.
have made some of the best games of all time.
Me too.
So I have absolute faith in them to do that. And I don't I will say there's two aspects of this. I think this ranked system is an experiment on an entirely new form of ranked matchmaking. I think that is what they are trying to do. And I think that part is fine, which is why it's so limited. That's the way the way the feedback and everything works. I think those aspects of it are genuinely good. I just worry that it is too early with a player base that is still too limited, uh, especially since the game's still not even like fully available. Like you still have to. It is invite only still. It's not like you can just go to Steam and download it. You still have to get invited into the game. So it's not like it's like that little bit of a limiting factor definitely lowers the player base. Um, so it's like, yes, I think there are certain aspects of it are good, but I think the general aspect that it is potentially lowering the player base unnecessarily removes more data that we can use to further development. And I think it can be rolled back to answer your question in a long-winded, roundabout way. I think it's one of those things that you could just take it out and just say, we are going to have like we're going to use the same matchmaking system that we're using in ranked, but it's just going to be like the regular queue where you can queue with as many people as you want. You can queue solo if you want, but it's just going to be the same matchmaking system. And we're going to use what we've learned in this, like, I guess, smaller case study, and we're going to apply that to the global audience and just go that route. And then, you know what? Who cares rank? Because you're still at least playing with your friends and doing stuff. And it's like that I think would still be fine if they wanted to do a hybrid. I think the other thing is you could just remove it entirely and say we're gonna repackage this later with some like modifications or something, right? And just say this was like a temporary thing.
Yeah,
Um,
so I guess we're kind of
yeah,
like, a bit of our closing thoughts here is like, what do we do from here, right? Like, what are the options? What do we think they could do? I guess some interest. I guess in this case, like, I think all of what you said is valid, but I also, for myself, am gonna, do my best to approach this with, I have no fucking clue what data they have behind the scenes, like how
yeah,
much, like, so they see the numbers going down, obviously, when it comes to player base. So rather than thinking like, um, what I think they should do, I guess my gut here is to say, what are the right questions for them to be asking themselves? And so I think one interesting question would be, would anybody stop playing the game because there is no longer ranked? Like, they added ranked, now they removed it. Would any of the hardcore try-hard players who cared so much about their rank, would any, if like, what percentage, if any, would actually stop playing? Like, I personally think it'd be super low.
I think it'd be incredibly low. I think
Uh,
it's like we're talking like like under 1%.
yeah, like, so that to me is the first question, because it's like, sure, maybe you're gonna get some pitchforks for like the first month or two or whatever, from these players, like some salt flowing through their veins. But at the end of the day, if we're looking purely at the player base as like a reference, because I'm sure there's a lot more statistics than just that, that would be my worst case scenario, is thinking, if we remove this, what happens? My brain thinks in weird ways sometimes. My immediate thought was that I was making a lot of changes in my life the last like 5 or 6 months, and at one point things kind of fell apart a little bit, and I was like, well, I don't know what went wrong. I changed like 10 things.
Yeah.
So I kind
What
of
broke?
had to spend like a month or two actually kind of like figuring out, okay, what was it, my daily routine? Was it what, like, oh, I kind of shifted games, like is it my streaming? Is it my what is it? I don't fucking know. And so I guess what I'm thinking is like, yes, you see the numbers going down. Um and honestly, I think it's really hard to know why the number's going down if you're doing so much with the game. Like if you're
Yeah.
changing so many things, I think the best thing that I learned for myself was to just simplify things down a little bit. Like it doesn't mean like, oh, if say they were to, discontinue ranked right now, it's not like it's never coming back. It's just
Yeah.
okay, maybe a bit too early, like, too many changes at once. Uh so I do like my approach when I was thinking about my life was to just try to revert as much as I could back to the original state before things kind of went off the rails, and then figure out like, okay, I understood what my life looked like before this. How can I proceed from here? And it's not going to be the same with the game because it's not like if they revert everything, like if they literally said, let's just restore the game to what it looked like on, September 9th. It's not going to like go back to that player base, right? Like that's not how it's going to work. But, I guess asking myself, like, what can they do to kind of like break things down a little bit and to say, okay, it's good that we need to change the rules of the game. It's good that we're experimenting. We're adding a lot of new heroes. There's so many things to keep up with. But that's already going to be overwhelming for our players. Like, meaning, like, that's already potentially changing a lot.
Hmm. Yep.
Let's not give them anything else to worry about. Like, that's my first gut. And that I agree with you that, like, my first thought was, like, would they ever really just say, wow, we fucked up and just remove ranked for the time being? But I personally think it's the best solution. I think they should.
Yeah. I don't think they have to like admit fault or say anything they made a mistake. Like I think what they're doing is objectively good in terms of like trying to figure out what they want. I just think the way this game is currently set up and with how like I think a lot of people approached it originally, I think ranked is a little bit rough right now. To like put it into perspective, like roughly 7% of people that actually play this game actually play 7 ranked games in a week. That's how
mm.
low of the player base we're talking. Like 7% of the players actually participate in ranked per week.
Where's
So
that a stat available? I'm just curious.
so your our the last 30-day monthly average view players was about 1.38 million. So
Okay.
there's a lot of people that play this game, okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The average daily users was about 400,000, but there was only 72,000 people, just shy of 72,000 people that actually received a rank in week 5.
Oh.
And this is down from week 1, which was about 110,000.
Okay.
So a lot of people played it the first week, and you can kind of see the trend of a lot of people backing out of ranked week after week after week.
Yep.
Because they just don't for various reasons, right? It could be whatever. It could be like you and me. We were out of town for 2 weeks, it's whatever. But I think just in general, the amount of people that actually participate in ranked is not that big, but I think it does way more harm to the overall amount of people that are enjoying the game just casually, like, or if they want to take it competitively, like in playing in stacks with friends. I know for me personally, like I was queuing this game with like up to 8 to 10 people daily for months, and then
Yep.
ranked came out, and I have not seen a single one of them since that day. Like I'm not even joking. I like
It's
literally
happened
10
to
to
me as
15
well.
people that I know personally do not touch this game anymore when it was their favorite game in the world because no one will stack anymore.
Yep. I think, I mentioned it when ranked came out that barrier, like when you mentioned barrier to the game being like simply getting an invite rather than just downloading the game. When you add barriers to anything, like human psychology is really
It's really
straightforward.
weird.
And I like it's weird, but it's straightforward in this regard, right? It's
Yeah.
like if you add a barrier to something, less people are gonna do it. Like
Hmm.
that's it. And like, you know, entire tangent I'm not going to go on, but one of the reasons like that it's been proven that like social media and stuff is so addictive is because your phone is on you 24/7, and at any
Yep.
moment in your day you can get distracted for 10 seconds, pull up social media, and then suddenly 30 minutes have gone by because you're not really thinking. And that's only a problem because I can literally on this podcast open up my phone, push two buttons, and I'm on Reddit. You know, like
Yeah.
that took 1 second. Oh, and I was playing a video. So the point is that when when people want to party together in Deadlock, and they like when they're thinking about playing this game, if they're like even worried about, oh, are my friends playing solo queue ranked without me, or like maybe maybe they're not even worried about it, it just happened like 3 or 4 times, because this is what happened. I remember like for my group, we would be like, hey, let's queue up, and then two of us, I was probably even one of the people that did this, by the way, where I was like, oh, I'm gonna play a few ranked games today, like,
And then they don't get on the next time.
yeah, and then like that happens 2 or 3 times, and no longer people are like, because what was happening before is at 11 a.m. every single day, Sing Sing started his stream, and like all of us kind of knew like whoever gets there first is gonna play.
Gets in the stack.
Yeah, gets in the stack.
Yeah.
And what was cool was we did that for like a month or two, and honestly, every time Sing Sing logged off, we would just disband the party. After playing together for a month, because I didn't know any of these people, I didn't know any of them. After playing for a month, you know, you get to know each other's personalities, you kind of get to know each other's playstyle, and it's fun that way. And then after Sing Sing logged off, this was like a hilarious moment for me, was that suddenly I was like, you guys just want to keep playing? And then everyone's like, sure. And then we just kept playing. And I was like, that's fucking awesome.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like, what
amazing.
a weird
That's
thing.
what gaming's about.
Yeah. And that, you know, there's no like empirical evidence of this, but that just literally stopped a week after rank came out. That literally stopped. And I know for a fact that multiple discussions within our group was like, are we going to go play ranked now? What's your rank? Like, oh, like, you know, it's 4 p.m. now. Like, let's end because ranked is opening.
Dude, I'm literally getting triggered, like, because this is like too real for me too. It's actually rough. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I think we can kind of give some closing thoughts for the topic, but I do feel like, you know, you used the word pure earlier, like you kind of like were finishing my sentence, and it wasn't the word I was initially thinking of, but honestly, I think it's the word I was kind of alluding to and probably wanted to say, and that I feel like this game was in its pure form, and if you look at the game in its pure form, it's a beautiful game, and I do feel like, you know, the numbers don't lie. Ever since ranked, it has been steadily decreasing in terms of concurrent players. There are still a lot of people, like you mentioned, that play this game.
A lot of people play this game.
And so it's not like, you know, we're trying to be all doomsday here. We're simply trying to be like, look, this is a clear trend. We're not trying to like oversimplify things here, but it is a clear, you know, connection between when ranked got released and the player base. And I think the more, you know, when you see those numbers, it's not enough to say ranked got released, number go down, wham. Like, it's more like we're trying to talk about.
It's a complex topic.
Yeah, it's a complex topic, and we're trying to talk about this was our experience. You know, this was our experience. Was we had our groups of friends. You said you had like 10 to 15 people. I had the same thing, and that is gone. And I feel like I used to have the same thing in Dota as well, and that is gone. You know, like obviously stuff happens. It's like that the Dota case was like 10 years ago, right? So it's like eventually friend groups fade and stuff like that. But they don't fade overnight, I feel like, you know, like
which is what happened here.
It felt like it effectively happened within like a week. And yeah, it's discouraging in regards to like it was a social activity for me, which is weird because for gaming for a while, I had just been a solo queue Dota grinder for like 8 to 10 years, and I honestly just forgot. I forgot what it was like. And you mentioned that at the beginning of the podcast that like a lot of people were like, wow, I forgot how much I needed a game like this. And and I'm now realizing that obviously the game itself is awesome. It wouldn't have worked if the game itself was not awesome. But a lot of what we, or at least I was thinking like, wow, I forgot I needed a game like this. It was the competitive social nature of
Yeah,
this game.
it's a combination.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like is now lacking after ranked has been released. The game
Yeah.
itself is still the same, but the social aspect is deteriorating.
Yeah, I think in general, I'm still very hopeful for Deadlock.
Me
I
too.
know this was not like you said, this is not like a doom and gloom episode by any means. This is more of a critical thought and analysis of what is happening. And I think a lot of people may have a different experience because there's a lot of people that play this game, but there's like it depends on where you are in this it's so shit that I'm about to actually say this, but it depends on maybe where you are in the skill layout of this game because there's maybe more people that are like in the higher end of ranks who are like unproportionally affected by this than people in like the middle of the pack type of thing. It's hard, like I don't really know, but uh
Only way to know is to start a discussion, by the way.
yeah, that's kind of why I've been wanting to talk about this for weeks. Like this has been something that has been bothering me for a month straight. And I just like am so glad that we finally get to this topic and I just want to hear from other people in terms of like is your experience different? Like has this game been exactly the same regardless of ranked for you or have you noticed kind of what Brian and I have, which is a lot of our friends are just like stepping away from the game or some people are only queuing ranked and so you just don't stack anymore and I'm just so at a loss if like maybe my individual experience it may just be completely different and I'm just on an island but I have no idea and so that's kind of why I wanted like to talk about this for so long now and I'm finally glad that we got to.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think this is a topic that, when we hear more from other people, when we kind of like, as time goes on, it'll evolve. And I think, today we kind of just planted a seed of like, this is our general impressions. This is what's been happening to us. We're happy to be told it's just us. We're also happy to be told that it's everyone else as well. Um, so like we're just kind of curious and throwing it out there. We coordinated the topic for today's discussion, but I didn't know how much you were gonna resonate with me when I said my description of the party. And you were like, "Oh shit, I'm getting
Dude,
triggered." So like that's exactly what we're talking about. Is by starting these discussions, we kind of get to be like, "Is this just me or like like
yep.
what do you think about this?" So yeah, I think this is a discussion that can definitely evolve and be ongoing, and I'm curious to see how Valve decides to like handle this. Like they clearly see everything we do, and they're better game developers than we are. So like
Yeah.
I definitely trust their progression. They've been very vocal and communicative to the community about like what they're doing and why, not just with balance changes, but also with stuff like this. So I guess all we can do is really do our best to voice our opinions in like a non-pitchfork righty kind of way, and more so just like
Yeah.
this is what we feel, and kind of just go from there. Wait to see what they do.
Yeah. I don't ever want this to come off as like I'm soapboxing and trying to like pretend in any capacity that I know more than anybody at Valve. Like that's an absurd thing to say. So, like I said earlier, I have absolute faith in Valve to make an incredible game. They've already made an incredible game and we're just barely getting off the ground with this. So, I'm not worried, and I think the cool part, like you said, like, oh, like it leads for further discussion. Like, it's so early in development that it's bound to be completely changed. Like, we're going to have to discuss this at some point in the future when Valve inevitably makes major changes to ranked one way or another. So I think that's going to be something that's going to be fun to revisit. And yeah, I don't really have much else to say. I feel like I could literally keep talking about ranked, but we have been going for quite a while, and I feel like we can leave more to further discussions in the future. But I just before we like wrap up the episode, I just want to say for those of you that are tuning in, if you're watching this on YouTube, please tell us your experiences. Stop by either mine or Brian's streams and tell us like what you have been feeling about it if you want, because it would. I think that feedback is important just to like get an idea. But yeah, that's how I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to episodes, 85 of the Deadlock podcast being ranked mode discussion 12,
Yeah, right.
I'm sure we'll touch on this many times to come. There's going to be hopefully this and a lot more interesting topics that we get to discuss with you guys. Please let us know if you think it's interesting as much as we do. And, for me, I would just say, just briefly, because we usually do like what did we learn this week? I'll just say that I learned once again from this podcast how validating it is to just hear somebody say, "Yeah, shit, that happens to me too." And
Yeah,
it could be
dude.
in regards to literally anything. And in this case, it's Deadlock. So that's my
Yeah.
quick lesson for myself, because that's something where it's easy to forget, and life tends to have a way of reminding you. So,
Yeah, where everyone's a lot more common than we think, right? It's like we
yep.
all have a lot of shared experiences that, we don't think about. I think for me, my real quick what I learned this week, I watched the Valve documentary on for the anniversary of Half-Life, and I learned a lot about Valve in there, and that's something we might touch on in a later episode. So I just want to say, if you guys haven't watched it, highly recommend go checking it out. It is a very good documentary to give you some insight into the geniuses, that are making Deadlock right now. So yeah, very
Sweet.
cool.
Right on, man. Well, then I think we can bid everyone adieu, as I completely botched our way out here.
It's
Thank
all
you so
right.
much for watching, everybody. That concludes episode 7 of the Deadlock and Load podcast, and we'll see you guys next time.
Have a good night, everybody.